So let's talk about melodies. What does a melody mean? Well, we don't play melodies on the drums because we don't have a melodic instrument, right? Kinda, sorta, but also kinda not, right? We do have tones. I got 10 tones there, right? So you can think about melody as just being a collection of tones, and right away you can play melodically on your instrument. But what we mean when we say melodically, what most people mean is they're referring to this sort of jazz style of fill-in playing or melodic figure playing. And one of the, probably the most popular proponent of this was a teacher named Alan Dawson. This is one of the styles that he taught a lot of, which is filling in between melodic figures. So if this all sounds kind of like, oh my gosh, it's too much to me, don't worry. This stuff is actually very intuitive. It's just different than the way that most people learn the drums, especially if you've never studied jazz before. So let's start really simple and work our way up. Let's just take this rhythm here. Okay, so this rhythm, everybody knows, should know it, should be able to read it. 1 and 2, 3, 4. All right, so this is about as much written stuff as we're going to have. Most of what we do is going to be in our head, and it's going to be interpreting what we see here. So keep this in your head, screenshot that, or memorize it. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's voice that. Let's just play it on something. Kick, right? We can play it on our snare. 1 and 2, 3, 4, tom. Whatever, doesn't matter. For the sake of this exercise, we're going to play it as crashes. Make sense? Let's do it 4 times in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you could do right, left. So right there, we're already playing melodically because I didn't say, this isn't written out, something that we're seeing as a pattern in our head. We're thinking about a melody. When I'm playing this, I'm saying dot, 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 dot to myself. Dot, 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 dot. Okay? So what Alan Dawson does, and lots of teachers do this, but Alan Dawson was one of the most popular ones, we fill in the cracks between these notes. So we have eighth notes and quarter notes. We can put 16th notes between everything. So that's 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Here's our melody. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're going to put the melody notes on bass and crash, and our fill-in notes go between. So it would sound like this. Okay, for a lot of people, that's going to be right there. They already need to spend time on it. Okay, focus on that. If you're struggling with that, just stay there until you can do it fluidly. And you should be able to focus on the melody, not on the fill-in notes. We're not thinking about it like this. I'm not thinking about this at all. It's just when I'm not playing this, I'm filling in with this. And you really need to be thinking that way. If you're not thinking that way, you're not going to be able to get any further in this. Okay, so you noticed that all of the melody notes happen to be on our right hand. It's pretty good, right? The next thing that you can do is you can either change the subdivision to triplets. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like swung time, right? And then you feel triplets between everything. So that would be, okay, so here's where the sticking comes into play. You either do it as all rights, and that gives you left-hand fill-ins, Or you can do alternate, and then you would just have whatever hand is free. So okay. The triplets are harder for a lot of people because we don't play as many triplets today. Most of the stuff we play is 16th notes and, split by 2 instead of 3. So that one's going to give you trouble for sure. Let's go back to 16th notes then. 1 and 2, 3. All right, first thing we can do, we can double our hands. So we've got... I'm really overplaying these. I'm playing those really loud so you guys can hear them. When you're doing it, you should be a lot more subtle. Again, the emphasis is on the... That's the important part. So we want to devote most of our energy, our dynamics, to that part. And this is just filling in. If you've got quicker hands, you can do those fill-ins as 30-second notes. So it's pretty fast. Wouldn't recommend doing that for a long period of time, but it's good, if you just got to do a little quick figure. All right, so now we can do a couple things from here to make it sound even more musical. We can start to move around on our voices. So let's say instead of just going, let's go to a simpler melody first so we can really focus on voicing. Let's say this is our melody. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a good melody. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's switch between snare and floor tom. So make sense? Okay, now let's get back to our old melody. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Up. Let's add another voice. So let's go. Kill some of this ring. See what I'm getting at? Okay, that's one way to go about it. The other thing we haven't done is start to play other melodies. So what we can do is, let's say, permutate. You guys are going to love that word. Permutate these eighth notes, aka a syncopation moving set. So we would move these from here to here to here, right? And then we'd add 2, move those over the bar line, right? This is the same grid I've used in like the last 15 videos. So you guys should start to know this grid by now. Let's do that. I'm going to go with, that's going to be let's call it my bass voicing. All right? So 1 and 4 times, 2 and 4 times, 3 and 4 and. Dot, 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 dot. Here we go. And. So I don't know about you guys, but when I play that stuff, it feels like an entirely different instrument. Like my brain is flipped in this entirely different way of thinking, where instead of thinking about it as all this sort of flat, you know, as opposed to just like patterns, like paradiddle and then an inverted paradiddle and then a double, like all these sticking combos and stuff, that all just goes away, and I'm just thinking about the melody. That's why this is called melodic playing. It's like I'm really singing this part in my head. And the more I focus on this part, the better the whole kit sounds. It's a very organic way to play, and it's an old school way to play. You know, this is the jazz approach of like being very musical on our kit. It's not appropriate for everything, which is probably the biggest reason why we don't do it all the time. It's a little Mickey Mouse if you're copying everything that the band is doing. You know, if you've got a melody in a band that's like, you know, bop 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 ba da bop bop, right? And you're just going like this, bop 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 bop, bop 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 bop. It's like, it's cool. It's participating, but it's a little too much, right? Especially for like modern music. And like, look, up to taste. If you think that's appropriate, you know, you do your thing. I'm just saying, like, most of the time people in modern context want more of, let's say, like 60 to 70% of timekeeping, groove playing, you know, with occasional hits. So when you're incorporating melodic playing into your regular playing, you're not just practicing it. Think of it almost like sort of a fill concept. Maybe do something. Here's a good thing to do. Let's take another melody. Let's make this our melody. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Okay. Bump 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 bump. That's our melody. And what we're going to do is, instead of playing it 4 times, we're going to play 3 measures of groove. And then our fill. Bump, 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 bump. Okay? So that is, I think, the most functional way to practice something like melodic playing. Or okay, so it's, you see what I'm saying, right? You can then start to experiment. So you can move it around the toms. What I would recommend if you want to practice this stuff, first of all, my book, Patterns, Melodies, and Rudiments. It's got a whole section on this with sample melodies. And then work out of a book like Syncopation. Make sense? I also have a video. I've got quite a few videos on melodic playing. If you go to my YouTube channel and go to the section called, I think it's called Fill Melodies. I think that's the name for it. Look that up. There's a bunch of good resources on there. You can get my books, groove exercises for the drum set, patterns, melodies, and rudiments, paradiddle power, kick workouts, lots of great books on the website. Everything's pretty cheap, $5-10. You can get a hard copy or a digital download of anything. This book, for example, Patterns, Melodies, and Rudiments, it's, I think, 130 pages. Maybe it's less, maybe it's a little more, but this is a lot of material for you to work out of for like $10-15. So if you're interested, check it out. If you'd like to support, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Instagram, leave a comment, give me a like. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM or an email at thedrummerbrain@gmail.com. And with that, I'll leave you guys to the rest of your week. Happy drums to you. See ya.